Oh snap!
Right, all right. Dream Team 718. We are in the first 100 days.
Feels good, man. Feels different. Feels different.
Does it?
Feels different.
Does the air smell a little fresher today?
Oh man. Like I don't feel like breaking my TV every time it's on CNN or something. You know. I don't it feels good.
Yeah, so I just want to just do a quick check-in, and for us, just a quick check-in on where we are emotionally, mentally, with how things stand. How did the whole presidential race progress? Benjamin, I know, I know you're ready. I know you're ready. So we're gonna start off with you and just reflecting on the whole presidential race and how it actually affected our community. As far as people's confidence in voting and stuff like that. Like.
Oh yeah, that's a good place to start for sure. Well, first of all, let me preface by saying, obviously, the last couple of days when it finally happened, it's just you feel a little bit more hopeful for the country.
Yes.
But this whole thing starting from the week of the election, it's just been such a long journey. And for me personally, it was frustrating at times just because of what was going down after the elections. After it was declared that he won, you saw a lot of false news false rhetoric being, pumped out by the loser of the election about the legitimacy of our voting process. Right? And regardless whether or not you like the electoral process or not, it doesn't matter. The point is that, voting, like America's the oldest democracy, right? And it's because of voting. Voting is so sacred within democracies, and that's something that cannot be compromised. And it wasn't compromised. But the fact that he was saying it was, and then you have people believing him for absolutely no reason at all, that was very disheartening, because it didn't make sense. There were multiple recounts.
Well, here's
the only thing I like about it, right? My favorite thing about it is that they were recounting, specifically like Georgia, they recounted like 3 or 4 times. So I'm like, this dude really lost 4 times in one election. Like he was losing over and over again. And I think it was Wisconsin, one county recounted, and it actually gave Biden more votes.
So here's the thing, Benjamin. It's human nature to get caught up in drama, right? And we tend to want to believe the negative commentary over truth sometimes, because it breeds drama. And I feel that he was trying to leverage that, to I just want to say, I don't want to say launch, but just to further his rhetoric. And I feel that it was difficult for me as a father. I have something as simple as my son coming up to me and he's like, Dad, you told me lying was wrong. I was like, yeah, it is. He's like, but the president is doing it.
Wow.
That's essentially the last 4 years.
Wow.
And it's like he told me, and my exact reaction was like,
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, what can you say?
tag me in. Tag me in.
I do want to say, just to piggyback on what you said, it was definitely, it felt like his movement was more like a cult, right? With the whole stop the steal campaign or whatever. I mean, there's obviously no evidence of whatever, anything he said. There's no evidence for it. But I do want to mention, I looked it up right now. I do want to mention this one quote from Voltaire. It says, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. And that's exactly what happened. Leading up to a week ago, when they they committed federal crime. They broke into the Capitol. That's where that came from. Is he knew the vulnerability of his base and what kind of people he had following him.
You know who was very successful doing that in history, man?
Hitler.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Any dictator.
I'm gonna see myself out.
Any dictator, that's the trick. It's you make them believe all these outlandish things, and then in the beginning, right, he was lying all along. But in the beginning, it was like, oh, that's too crazy. And then it came to a point where it's like it was normalized. That was the scary part.
Yes.
Because November 3rd, 4th, 5th, after it took a while because of the mail-in ballots. In the beginning, when he was saying, oh, the election got stolen, at first it was like, oh, this dude's talking crazy. And then you see one host from Fox News, whatever, any news, and then now it's like people really believing it without any kind of evidence.
He doesn't need evidence.
To the point where they're even turning on people from their own party who's saying, listen, there's no evidence of vote stealing or any kind of discrepancy in the voting system. So that led up to a week ago. So I know it's a long-winded answer, but to answer your question, I mean, today was definitely, it was just a sigh of relief from the headache of the last 2 months where you couldn't believe the insanity that was being, talked about with the whole process. And lastly, I want to say, I think now there's a bigger responsibility to make sure that people understand the legitimacy of the elections, because I don't want to say all of his followers believe it, but 74 million voted for him. I think a good amount believe, a good amount now has less confidence in our election system, and that's like a key cog of a democracy is voting.
See, the other thing that bothered me is that the fact that they were considering to reject the electoral votes, right?
That's happened before, though.
It has.
That's happened before where the electors voted against, but not as widespread as that.
But here's my
not
thing.
To the point where you have like key figures saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to oppose it."
But here's my thing. You have it, whereas there's such distrust for the electoral process within our communities to begin with.
Right.
Right.
I'm not a fan of it personally.
All right. So now, for that to be something that they're talking about now, like, my question is, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, like, why would I vote? Like, why would I vote if you're trying to say you're just gonna decide which vote to listen to? Or you're gonna listen to the popular vote? You're gonna go to the electoral? Like what are we doing?
Well, it's really the electoral vote that counts, right?
Yeah.
But the reason why you should vote is because of the last 4 years. That's the reason why you should vote. It's because if you don't, I mean, nobody ever thought that would happen.
I agree.
Yeah, voting is one of those things where, like for me with voting, I think as you get older, and especially as a man of color, as you get older, you really start to realize how much people gave their lives for it. And then you're like, man, if it wasn't this important, why would people die for this? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why would people die for this? Like, if it wasn't important, like our ancestors, our grandfathers, grandmothers who like died for this right to vote because they knew how important it was. And I think until you get a little older and you see the significance of that, you really like, what's voting? My vote don't matter. Like, many of us grow up like that. Like, I'm not voting, but it don't even matter. And what happens is if you get enough people thinking that, then more people don't vote, and then the impact is lessened because I'm thinking the same thing, Mike's thinking the same thing, Ben's thinking the same thing, and we're not acting on it. So if we can convince a number of people not to vote, that's a good thing because then their voice is not heard. There's a reason why, you know, there was poll taxes and you had to get like there was barriers to voting because the people who were running knew that if people started voting, things might look a little different. But I think that that comes with as you get older and you really start. I think now, I think the younger generation is probably more engaged in politics than probably we were when we were coming up. I'm to be honest.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think they're more engaged with social unrest and social justice more than when we were coming up. So I give them that. I think one of my biggest things, as much as I am um relieved over the last 4 years. I don't want people to have a false sense of like we made it and like the work is done
Yes.
and like we can breathe like a sigh of relief because it's done. Like it's far from over.
Yeah, we did
It's
the same
the
thing with
beginning.
Obama, and that's the
Yeah,
problem.
and this is what happens. Like this is what happened when Obama got elected, and it's like it's done. We good. It's like nope, nope. The work has just begun, and I think the most important thing for everyone to remember that the political system, like every other system, is jacked because people are in it, right? You got flawed human beings in the
Exactly.
political system. So we can strive to where I'm hopeful in our political system and it can work better, but we also need to be reminded that we have human flawed individuals in politics that ultimately have human flawed outcomes, right? and but we can definitely do a better job, right? We could definitely do a better job if we treated each other like humans.
Well, that's what
like
that's why I like,
humans.
let's just get it out there for me. I'm Bernie Sanders is my first choice
Okay.
because I think he appeals to
The everyman.
most of America, like the middle class the most, based on what he wants, right? But the reason why I support Joe Biden, I don't know if you guys heard what he said today, or maybe it was like a playback from yesterday, but he said that politicians should not forget that they work for the people. People don't work for them. Like they serve the public. I think that's the problem why people are so disenfranchised and why people are so disenamored about politics is because they feel that the integrity is not there anymore.
Yeah.
Like the days of Abraham Lincoln and where the weight of the US, the weight of America were on their shoulders and they understood that. The FDRs, the Lincolns, people don't feel that way these days anymore. That's why when you hear a politician like, Barack Obama, Joe Biden say that, listen, it's our responsibility. Like we work for the people. When you hear things like that, it makes you feel hopeful that it's headed to the right direction.
It does.
But it can't be up and down. It can't be, 8 years of progress followed by like the last 4 years completely just destroyed the progress that was made. So I think that's the biggest thing is I hope that people understand, voters, the public, they elect, don't vote for whoever's just in your party, vote for whoever has vote based on their policy, but also keep in mind their integrity. I think if you vote for people with high integrity, good things happen. The AOCs,
it's not going
the
to be
Bernie
perfect.
Sanders.
It's not going to be perfect.
It's not. But certain people, you could tell, man. Certain people are like, yeah, you're not really looking out for nobody but yourself.
Yeah.
You could just tell.
Yeah.
And for people to still vote for them just because they're a certain party, that's what's gonna set or stop the country from progressing to really improving and really becoming the bastion of democracy, in my opinion.
I think that's part of the issue. I think many people are aligned to certain political parties, be them primarily whether Democrat, Republican, red or blue. I think at the end of the day we forget that we're like all human beings. And what I find, like, no matter what Facebook page I'm on, or I look at I'm that guy that wants to find the negative comment and be like, but why? Like, it's crazy. Like, you could, like, people are like, yeah, I'm glad that have a new president, hope things are going to be on the up and up. And somebody be like, yeah, hope you snowflakes can handle the fire. And it's like, bro, like what do you, like, what happens? Who, like what happened? And it's just like, or God forbid someone have an alternative view, like you're instantly they use like the term, like, lefty or leftist is like this like,
I hate those things. I hate the term.
Right. And it's like just to attack people, or if they support Trump or some of the right wing, if you want to say that, policies, now they're right, this, and it's just like, why is that even a thing? Like, if they share a different view, I think that's a chance to have a conversation. Like, that's a chance to communicate. Like, that's a chance to, at the very least, see where someone is coming from. And I think that's a huge part of the problem we have. People so aligned, blue and red, and it's just like I consider myself someone who's, like, I guess a centrist. Like, I'm down the middle. Like, I understand, like, to Gary's point, like, politics on the floor because people are in it. So I can't align myself with either one because I know that there's good and I know there's faults in both. So I'd rather, hang out in the middle and look and say, okay, I can agree with that. I can see this perspective here. And it allows me not to be so, like, clouded and aligned to the point where I'm just like, nah, you with this? This is a dub. Like, I hear what you're saying. Okay, maybe if I took the time to listen, I see certain things make sense. I may not agree, but I at least want to be able to hear you out, And I feel like we at a place where it's just like, I just want to antagonize and it just, like, hurt. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
It's bad that you have friends and family that stop talking to each other over politics.
Yeah.
Actually, since you spoke, Mike, I'm gonna pick on you. What about, I want to touch on the fact that Biden had to write into law making it mandatory to wear face masks on public transportations, airplanes, trains, and buses, and stuff like that.
That is a good one.
And all I'm saying is the fact that he had to put that into law.
I think to some degree that's ludicrous. Like, the fact he had to write it into law. Like, the reason I say that is because I've watched videos where people are like, man, this is a free. I think it was in Florida. It was like, man, this is ludicrous. This, that, and the third.
Love you.
Robert.
Love you, Florida.
Yeah. No shame in Florida. No clap. But it's just like, I get that, and because the last person that spoke said what was on my mind. Like, everybody was like, yo, my right to be violated. If I don't want to wear a mask, I don't have to. This, that, and the third. The last person was like, you know what? Like, I get it. And they were talking to, like, their I think it was like the board of that community. They were like, you know what? I get it. I understand, and I hear everybody else that spoke today. But I think we need to understand that it's not about me. It's about those, unlike myself, who may be more at risk, be it those who are, elderly, like the immunocompromised or what may have you. and it's just like you're wearing a mask. Like, it's nothing more than that. And it's why you're, like you said, public transportation and whatnot. And I think the fact that he has to write into law to an extent shows like the selfishness and like entitlement of people. Like, I don't have to wear this. Like, but you should. If you care about other people outside of yourself, you should.
I think this is why Ben is considering going to Japan.
Well, that's the thing I was going to talk about, right? Where did that narrative start about, oh, I'm not a sheep, I'm not weak? Where did that start? It's the leadership, how leadership handled the situation way back when. In other countries, Japan, Australia, it didn't matter your political views. All the political leaders all said the same thing: wear a mask, social distance. It was highly politicized here. And again, it's the rhetoric that was being pushed out. If the leadership back then and everybody, red, blue, green, whatever side of the aisle you're on, if everybody said, let's all wear a mask, let's social distance, nobody's going to say, oh, I don't want to be a sheep. Because you have all your leaders saying it. Okay, maybe not nobody, maybe a small group, but not half the country. You have certain states where there's reports and like, was it Alabama who just won the national championship for football, for college football? I don't know if you guys saw the picture. It was like Mardi Gras in the streets after they won. And on the comment, so on YouTube, it says, oh, Alabama won. And on the comments, everybody was saying, nope, COVID won. Now we in there. So that's the thing. It starts with the leadership. And Ron, to answer your question, it's sad when something that's common sense or supposedly common sense, you have to force people to do that just because they don't want to be quote unquote sheep, where it's really just being sensible.
Okay, see, here's my personal view on it, right? You don't have to, nobody has to agree with me. All right, I wear a mask when I go outside because personally, like, I have a family that I need to protect.
Right.
Right. And I'm like, I know COVID is out there. Whether it be 5G, whether it be some government conspiracy, the fact of the matter is, it's out there, right? I don't want to bring it home.
Right. Yes.
Right. So I go out there, I put a mask on because I want to protect myself, and in me protecting myself, I protect my family. When I go outside, I would hope that the person that's going to be walking down the street, coming in the opposite direction, will feel the same way and try to protect themselves because they want to protect their loved ones and their friends. And it's weird when I go outside and I'm walking, I see the people not wearing a mask looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, okay, so are we hearing the same news reports?
Like, not even hearing, but seeing the same things. You see a lot of people in hospitals. You see 400,000 dead in the country. Millions. I think 70 million people worldwide got affected by COVID or got sick. It's not rocket science. It's there. It's not a hoax. It's not a conspiracy. Because if it was a conspiracy, there wouldn't be 400,000 people. There wouldn't be dead bodies.
But here's my point, Benjamin. Here's my thing. As selfish as we are as a country, as a nation, right? You would think self-preservation will prevail. That's all I'm saying.
You would think.
You would think.
You would think. I think, like many things, I think it don't get real for people until it like hits them close to home. Like, unless they get it or they know, like, my mom got it, I got it, my brother got it. Then dude's like, maybe I should put on a mask. Like,
I would disagree.
Like, and even sometimes that don't matter, right? sometimes
Look at the guy who just left the White House. He
yeah,
caught COVID and he was maskless, walking around like not even after his quarantine period.
yeah, yeah. I think one of the
It's
big things,
crazy.
it's Ron, you hit it on. It's a, and I hope I don't sound like I hate humans because I don't. I love people. I love people. I do, but the issues we have are fundamentally in us as human beings. Like before we get to party, before we get to red, blue, like we have fundamental deep issues. Like I think about some of the inventions we created because we, like for example, I think about the stoplight, right? I think about
Mhm.
the stoplight. Why was the stoplight created? Because in ourselves, it's like, well, I want to go and I'm going, and I could care less if you need to go. I'm going. Until someone's like, let's create a stoplight that forces the other people to stop so others can go. Like we don't think in terms of other. Like Ron, as a parent, you have to teach your children how to be other centered. You don't have to teach them how to be self centered. Like that
No.
comes pre-downloaded.
Do you
So
think that's cultural though?
I think it's pre-downloaded in our disposition as humans. Like pre-downloaded. It's part of the software, bro.
I I agree partly, but I think it's more cultural because let's stick to the masking thing, right?
Yep.
It's not a problem in Japan.
See now,
It's not a
see,
problem in Australia.
Benjamin, let me stop you right there. See, now we're going into a whole different field now, because now we're talking about whether it's nature versus nurture.
I think it's definitely nurture for me.
Hmm.
It's definitely our culture
Mhm.
because you see the difference in the we're more like you said, the thing that we kept mentioning was a lot of people here are selfish
Yeah.
and they look out for themselves. In other countries they wear a mask not because they're scared, oh, I don't want to get anything because I have a family. It's I don't want to give anything to this person. That's the difference in the mindset. So I think it's just a cultural thing, which obviously, you go different parts of the world, culture is going to be different.
Yeah.
But you would think a pandemic would kind of
Yeah. Smart
draw
people.
everything in and say, you know what? I just need to, it's just for now. I just need to do this. And then once the pandemic is over, do whatever you want.
You know, and even like you said, if we just adopt the mentality, like, you know what, this is not going to be forever.
Yeah.
Right.
It's something that's going to be dated,
Right.
right? So,
And the
oh,
irony is the more we don't listen, the longer the more it gets
Right.
prolonged.
and that's the question: is like, how long do we want this to last?
Like, hey man, we can keep doing this. Like we're going to keep doing this until like people smart up. Like yeah, everybody's like, I want to get back to normal. It's like, well, do what you need to do.
Yeah.
Like we could go, we could get back if you know, like
Like people are complaining, oh, restaurants are closed, blah, blah, blah. Like, number one, so based on what we know now, right? Which has been pretty consistent from the beginning, where it's like, okay, the incubation period, we know a little bit more now. But in the beginning, I thought to myself when I was actually in Asia when all this started. I wasn't in China, I was in Manila, and I had a long stopover in Japan. And even when it was still in China, people in Manila, people in Japan were already like masking up and being careful, right? And I was like, man, I hope this doesn't get to the United States because ain't no way people are gonna wear masks there. That's what I was thinking. But I'm in my mind, I'm like, okay, how do we stop a pandemic? We know there's an incubation period. We know that there's an infection rate.
Mm-hmm.
So if we lock down, so they said incubation period is like at that point, I think they said 2 to 3 weeks. You could have the virus without show. All right, cool. If we lock down back then from February, March to just say April, like 8 weeks, if the whole world just locked down and stayed home and isolated those who were sick and, treated them, theoretically, everything could have been done by the summer.
Theoretically.
But yeah.
So, okay, before we move on to the next subject, right? You know how I love to play devil's advocate. As I know. I'm going to put this out there to you guys. I'm a gamer. And there's this mobile game called Plague. I don't know if any of you guys.
Oh yeah, everybody knows that game.
Plague. That's what it's called.
So literally, the game is you
try to create like a virus.
You create a virus, and the purpose is you create situations so the virus can spread. So you mutate it. You start propaganda and all you literally just try to create an environment for this thing to just decimate the world.
Timing couldn't be worse.
And don't you win by people who like mortality, right?
So yeah, by mortality. So the point is, the interesting thing is in the game gets more like you have easy, hard, easy, normal, and hard, right? So as the game gets harder, like you go from easy to normal. In normal, people wash their hands with soap. Right?
Wait.
It makes it that much more difficult for the virus to spread. In hard, they wash their hands with soap, right? They wear masks, and they actually go and get their vaccinations.
This is a real game?
It's a real game.
Yeah.
It's been around for it's been around
for like decades. I think it started in like the early 2000s, maybe.
Yeah.
Or like late 90s. It was a PC game.
I heard about it like in 2010 or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm still concerned about easy mode.
Easy mode is what we're doing now, bro.
Yeah, easy mode. They don't wash their hands.
No mask. That's it.
No mask. All right.
Wow.
And it's easier for you to actually infect the vaccination itself.
Oh my gosh.
The timing
because I was doing a study on this too. I was like reading up on studies about the vaccination, right? And according to like studies, even if the efficacy rate of a vaccine is only 50%, right? But if people are masking, social distancing, following protocols, and the infection rate is low, it's actually better than having a vaccine that's 95% effective but nobody's following the protocols. The 50% vaccine is more effective because there's less people transmitting the virus.
Sure.
Now imagine if there's no way, civilization is I say at this point it's pretty capable of a lot of things. There's no reason why there's already a vaccine and we're still seeing 200,000. I don't know. I stopped checking the count. It's still like hundreds of thousands of people every day getting infected. Like there's no way, based on the knowledge that we have, based on where we are as a society, we're more than capable of dealing with this.
Yeah.
So kudos to big credit to Joe Biden for actually, not only that, but allocating more funds to like the vaccination process, and he's addressing the right things. So far I like what he's doing.